The morning they discovered I'd been meeting Thomas in secret, Mother fainted onto the Persian rug in the drawing room. Father's face turned the color of aged wine, and my sister Charlotte laughed so hard she nearly choked on her morning tea. "The stable boy," she gasped between fits of laughter. "Our Eleanor wants to marry the stable boy." But before I tell you how I became the wealthiest woman in all of Yorkshire, before I explain how those who mocked me now curtsy when my carriage passes, let me take you back to where it all began. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories start in the most unexpected places, and the most powerful transformations come from the courage to follow your heart when the entire world tells you you're mad. If you've ever been told you're not good enough, if you've ever loved someone society said you shouldn't, or if you've ever wondered whether true love can conquer all, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and settle in, because what I'm about to share will change everything you thought you knew about love, courage, and destiny. It was the summer of 1887 when I first saw him. I was 19, the youngest daughter of Lord Ashworth, and my life had been planned since birth. I would marry well, preferably to the Duke of Pemberton's son, according to Mother's designs. I would host elaborate parties, bear children, and uphold the family name. That was my destiny, written in stone and sealed with generations of tradition. But destiny, I learned, has a peculiar sense of humor. I had ventured to the stables that afternoon to check on Midnight, my Arabian mare, who had taken ill. The regular stable master was away, and in his place stood a young man I'd never seen before. He couldn't have been more than 22, with sun-bronzed skin and hands that spoke of honest work. When he looked up from examining Midnight's hoof, his eyes met mine, eyes the color of autumn leaves, warm and deep and utterly unguarded. "She'll be fine, miss," he said, his voice carrying a slight Irish lilt. "Just needs rest and proper care." I should have thanked him and left. That's what a proper lady would have done. Instead, I found myself asking, "What's your name?" "Thomas O'Brien, miss. Just started yesterday." Thomas O'Brien. Even his name sounded like rebellion against everything I'd been taught. Irish, Catholic, working class, everything my world stood against. Yet when he smiled, a genuine, unaffected smile, something inside me shifted, like a key turning in a lock I didn't know existed. Over the following weeks, I found excuses to visit the stables. Midnight's health, naturally. The need for extra rides to improve my constitution. Any reason that would allow me a few stolen moments with Thomas. He was different from every man I'd ever met. He didn't flatter me with empty compliments or treat me like a delicate flower. He spoke to me as an equal, sharing stories of his homeland, his dreams of one day owning his own horse farm. "You're not like the others," he told me one afternoon as we walked along the paddock fence. "The others? The ladies who come here, they see the horses as pretty possessions. You see them as souls." No one had ever seen me so clearly. In ballrooms filled with eligible bachelors, I was Eleanor Ashworth, the pretty younger daughter worth a substantial dowry. With Thomas, I was just Eleanor, a woman who loved horses, who read poetry in secret, who dreamed of a life beyond endless social calls and suffocating corsets. Our friendship deepened as summer turned to autumn. What began as casual conversations became something more profound. We would meet in the old garden pavilion, hidden from view by overgrown roses and ivy. There, away from prying eyes, we talked about everything: philosophy, literature, our dreams for the future. Thomas was self-educated, having taught himself to read using newspapers and discarded books. His mind was sharp, his observations keen, and his heart was the purest I'd ever known. The first time he held my hand, it was to help me over a puddle. But he didn't let go immediately, and neither did I. We stood there, connected by that simple touch, and I knew I was lost. Everything I'd been raised to believe, every rule that had been drummed into my head, crumbled in the face of what I felt for this man. "We can't," he whispered, even as his thumb traced gentle circles on my palm. "I know," I replied, even as I stepped closer. "But knowing and doing are two different things, aren't they? Love doesn't follow the rules of society. It doesn't care about bank accounts or bloodlines. It simply is like sunshine or rain, impossible to deny and foolish to resist. By winter, we were meeting in secret whenever we could. The stable had a small room in the loft where Thomas lived, and sometimes, when the house was asleep, I would slip out in my darkest cloak and spend hours there, talking by candlelight. He showed me his sketches, beautiful drawings of horses and landscapes that revealed an artist's soul beneath the stable boy's exterior. You could sell these, I told him one night, studying a particularly stunning drawing of midnight. He laughed, but it was bitter. To whom? Nobody wants art from a stable boy, Eleanor. The world doesn't work that way. Then we'll change how the world works, I said fiercely. He looked at me then with such tenderness it made my heart ache. My brave, impossible girl, don't you know the world doesn't change for people like us? But I was young and in love and absolutely certain that our love could overcome anything. How naive I was. How beautifully, necessarily naive. It was Charlotte who discovered us. My perfect sister, engaged to a barren son, who had noticed my frequent absences and followed me one night. She found us in the pavilion, not doing anything scandalous, just sitting close, Thomas reading to me from a book of Irish poetry. But it was enough. The look of triumph on her face told me everything. Wait until Father hears about this, she hissed. The explosion came the next morning. Father raged. Mother wept. Charlotte smirked from her corner, delighted to no longer be compared to her perfect, younger sister. They brought Thomas before them like a criminal, and the things they said to him, about his worth, his audacity, his very existence, made me burn with shame and fury. You will leave immediately, Father commanded. If I ever see you near my daughter again, I'll have you arrested for theft. Theft of what? Thomas asked quietly. Of time, of reputation, of things that don't belong to you. I watched the light dim in Thomas's eyes, watched him shrink into himself, and something inside me snapped. No, I said, standing. Thomas stays. The room went silent. Ladies didn't say no to their fathers. Daughters didn't defy direct orders. But I wasn't just a lady or a daughter anymore. I was a woman in love, and that made me dangerous. If Thomas leaves, I continued, my voice steady despite my shaking hands, I leave with him. Mother gasped. Charlotte laughed, actually laughed, as if I'd told the most amusing joke. Father's face went from red to purple. You would throw away everything for a stable boy, he thundered. Your name, your fortune, your family? I would throw away a life of emptiness for a chance at happiness, I replied. I would trade a loveless marriage to a duke for a lifetime with a man who sees my soul. Yes, Father. I would throw it all away, gladly. Then you are no daughter of mine, he said, each word falling like a hammer blow. You have until morning to reconsider. Choose him, and you leave this house with nothing but the clothes on your back. You'll be dead to this family. That night, I barely slept. I paced my room, weighing everything I would lose against everything I might gain. By dawn, my decision was made. I packed a single bag with my few personal treasures, my mother's pearl necklace, hidden away, some money I'd saved, and the book of poetry Thomas had been reading to me. I found him in the stable, packing his own meager belongings. When he saw me dressed in my traveling clothes, bag in hand, his face crumpled. No, Eleanor. I won't let you destroy your life for me. My life isn't destroyed, I said firmly. It's just beginning. But if you send me away, if you let their hatred win, then yes, that would destroy me. We left that morning in the stable's old cart, with nothing but hope and each other. Behind us, I left scandal, whispers, and a family who chose pride over love. Ahead lay uncertainty, hardship, and the terrifying freedom of creating our own destiny. If you think love conquers all easily, let me tell you about our first year. We traveled to London, where Thomas found work at a livery stable and I took in sewing, my one practical skill. We lived in a cramped room above a bakery, where the smell of bread was lovely, but the mice were not. I, who had never cooked anything harder than tea, learned to make stew from scraps. My soft hands became rough, from washing and mending. There were nights we went to bed hungry, mornings we woke to frost on the inside of our window. But there were also moments of pure magic. Sunday walks in Hyde Park, where we pretended to be just another married couple. Evenings when Thomas would sketch by candlelight while I read aloud. The night he sold his first drawing, just for a few shillings, but we celebrated like he'd been commissioned by the Queen. And through it all, we had each other. When the world was cold, we created our own warmth. When hope seemed lost, we found it in each other's eyes. Don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying this story, and comment below if you've ever had to choose between security and love. Your stories inspire me as much as I hope mine inspires you. The turning point came 18 months after we'd left. I was mending a particularly fine dress for a wealthy client when I noticed something curious about the stitching. It was poorly done, yet this was supposed to be a high-end garment. An idea began to form. What if I could offer better quality work directly to these wealthy women? What if my years of training in needlework, so mocked as a useless lady's pursuit, could become our salvation? I started small, offering my services to one client, then two. Word spread about the mysterious seamstress who could create French seams as fine as any Paris atelier. Soon I was turning away work. Thomas, ever supportive, suggested we rent a small shop front. It was a risk, every penny we'd saved, but we took it. O'Brien's Fine Needlework opened on a rainy Tuesday in March. Our first customer was a wealthy merchant's wife who needed a dress altered for a ball. When she saw my work, she commissioned 3 new gowns. By summer, I had hired 2 assistants. By the following year, we had expanded to the shop next door. But success in business was only part of our transformation. Thomas, freed from the daily grind of stable work, began pursuing his art seriously. I encouraged him to paint the wealthy women who came for fittings, their horses, their estates, their children. These paintings, displayed in our shop, began attracting attention. A prominent art dealer, visiting his wife during a fitting, was struck by Thomas's talent. "Who painted these?" he demanded. "My husband," I said proudly. "Has he exhibited?" "Not yet." Well, that must change immediately. Thomas's first exhibition was a modest affair, but it led to commissions. His second was reviewed in the Times. By his third, he was being called one of London's most promising new artists. The same society that would have scorned him as a stable boy now competed to have their portraits painted by the mysterious Thomas O'Brien. 5 years after we'd fled in a stable cart, we returned to Yorkshire in our own carriage. Not to reconcile, that bridge was burned, but to purchase property. The Whitmore estate, neighboring my family's land, had come up for sale. It was poetic justice, too delicious to resist. The day we moved in was the day I saw my family again. They were riding past as our belongings were being unloaded. Charlotte, now a baron's wife but looking pinched and unhappy, nearly fell off her horse when she saw me directing the servants. Mother went white. Father looked older, smaller somehow. I could have snubbed them. Part of me wanted to. But love had taught me that hatred is a poison we drink hoping others will suffer. Instead, I nodded politely, as one would to any neighbor. The transformation of our fortunes became the talk of Yorkshire. How had the disgraced Ashworth daughter and her stable boy husband become so wealthy? How dare they show their faces in polite society? But money, I learned, has a peculiar way of washing away scandal. When you're poor, love across class lines is disgraceful. When you're rich, it's romantic. Our first society invitation came from the Duchess of Marlborough. Partly curiosity, I'm sure, but also because she'd heard of Thomas's art and my French connections in fashion. We attended, heads high, and by evening's end, had 3 new commissions and a dozen invitations. But the true victory came a year later. Charlotte's husband had made poor investments, and they were facing ruin. She came to our door, my proud sister, who had laughed at my choices, asking for help. I could have turned her away, as our father had turned away Thomas. Instead, I invited her in for tea. "Why?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "After everything?" "Because," I said simply, Love taught me that lifting others up doesn't diminish us. It makes us all stronger. We helped them, of course, not just with money, but with connections. Thomas painted portraits that helped restore their social standing. I designed gowns for Charlotte that made her the envy of Yorkshire. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt what pride had destroyed. Mother came next after Father's death. He had never forgiven me, but on his deathbed, she said, he'd spoken my name. She stood in my drawing room, far grander than the one where she'd fainted at news of Thomas, and wept. I was wrong, she said simply. You found something I never had, true partnership, real love. I spent 40 years in a marriage of convenience, watching you from afar, living with courage I never possessed. Forgiveness isn't easy. It's a choice we make daily, like love itself. But I'd learned that holding on to anger is like clutching hot coals. You're the one who burns. So I forgave, and in forgiving, found a peace I hadn't known I was missing. Today, 20 years after that morning, I chose love over security. I stand as one of Yorkshire's most respected women, not just for our wealth, though Thomas's art now hangs in galleries across Europe and my fashion house dresses royalty. Not just for our influence, though we've helped dozens of young couples facing similar prejudice, but for proving that love, real love, can indeed conquer all. When I enter those manor gates, not just ours, but any in the county, people bow. Not because they have to, but because they respect what we've built. The girl who fled with nothing but love returned with everything. The stable boy they mocked became a celebrated artist. The scandal that should have destroyed us became the foundation of our strength. But here's what I want you to understand, what I need you to truly hear. Our success didn't come from fairy tale magic. It came from choosing each other every single day. When the money ran out, when society scorned us, when fear whispered that we'd made a terrible mistake, we chose love. We chose work. We chose hope. We chose to build rather than tear down, to forgive rather than foster hatred, to create rather than destroy. Love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision. 1,000 small choices that add up to a life. Thomas and I didn't just fall in love once. We chose to love each other through poverty and wealth, through scandal and acceptance, through youth and into our silvering years. That's the real miracle. Not that a lady married a stable boy, but that two people chose to grow together rather than apart. If you're watching this and facing your own impossible choice, know this. The path of the heart is never easy, but it's always worth it. Society will mock you. Family may abandon you. You'll face hardships you never imagined. But if your love is true, if your partner sees your soul, and you see theirs, if you're willing to work and grow and forgive, then you already have everything you need. Don't let fear decide your future. Don't let other people's limitations become your own. The world is changed by those brave enough to love boldly, live authentically, and refuse to apologize for choosing happiness over approval. They laughed when I said I'd marry the stable boy. Now they bow when I enter the manor gates. But the real victory isn't in their bows or their respect. It's in the life Thomas and I built together, the love that grew stronger through every trial, the proof that when you choose love, really choose it, with all its challenges and uncertainties, you choose the greatest adventure life can offer. So I ask you, what are you choosing? Security or passion? Approval or authenticity? A life planned by others or a life created by your own brave heart? Choose love. Choose courage. Choose the path that makes your soul sing, even if the whole world laughs. Because one day, they won't be laughing anymore. They'll be asking how you found the courage to live the life they were too afraid to choose. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own stories of choosing love over fear. Let's create a community of brave hearts who refuse to let society dictate their happiness. Remember, your love story is waiting to be written. Make it legendary. And to Thomas, who may never see this, but who lives in every word, thank you for seeing the woman I could become when I could barely see past society's expectations. Our love story began in a stable, but it built us a castle, not of stone and mortar, but of dreams made real. chances taken, and a love that refused to be anything less than extraordinary. This is Lady Eleanor O'Brien, signing off. May your choices be brave, your love be true, and your life be the adventure you deserve.